welcome to this month's edition of Slugger TV. In this episode, we're going to be looking at what's it like to be a candidate in the election, okay? As the campaign is about to get started, we thought it would be fascinating to get the insight from two people who have actually done it. So no armchair commentators in the studio apart from me. So we have both of them former junior ministers. We have Fearon, who was a Sinn Féin MLA for Newry and Armagh from 2012 to 2019. And we have Emma Pengelly, who was DUP MLA for South Belfast from 2015 to 2017, and then Member of Parliament from 2017 to 2019. You're both very welcome. Megan, just wanted to ask, what possessed you? What first encouraged you to actually make the leap to go in? Because I appreciate it's one thing to be an activist in a party, but then to take a step up and go to Stormont or to get elected.
Yeah.
What was it that motivated you to make that leap?
That whole period was kind of a whirlwind for me, to be honest. I was so young at the time. I think I was still only 20. I had obviously been an activist in the party for a couple of years, had held a number of different roles, did work experience a couple of times with Conor Murphy, and I was actually just graduating in, I think I started in the Assembly on like the Monday and graduated on the Thursday or something, which in hindsight is a bit mad. But yeah, I don't know, the opportunity came up. I was actually away travelling with a friend and got a phone call, you know, the party decided to end double jobbing. Conor Murphy was stepping down as MLA, and they wanted to replace him and go in a kind of a different direction. So they asked me to put my name in for a convention. At first I said no a number of times. And then I thought, you know what, like I'm constantly advocating that we need more women, we need more young people in politics, so I would feel like a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't take this opportunity and do it for myself. So yeah, put my name in for a convention. Can't say I actually expected it to go anywhere, but it did. I think I had originally wanted to work for the party as like economic policy advisor or something of that nature, and eventually work my way up towards being an elected rep, but
so you did it
kind of happened, yeah.
Kind of the opposite way. And just people may not remember, because 2012, 10 years ago now,
yeah.
You were 21 when you became a rep, and I think you are the youngest person ever to be put into the Assembly. You're co-opted in to replace Conor Murphy. Yeah. What was that like, the first, because obviously being, when I was 21, goodness knows what I was up to, being an MLA was the last thing, so.
I was actually 20, I turned 21 a couple of weeks after that, so officially 20. But no, I'm not going to lie, it was very difficult. It was very lonely. There was not a lot of people in politics at that time, at that age, and people were nasty. Like, there was just a lot of bitterness and anger towards me, and that first year was very, very difficult to navigate. I had a lot of support, obviously, within the party, but it was very difficult to navigate. Nowadays, it's completely like second nature for a young person to go into a role like that, and in fact welcomed, but I think the mould just kind of had to be broken a little bit. So it was difficult. There was, I mean, within the Assembly itself, there was just a lot of nastiness in the chamber and things like that, but you grow a thick skin and get on with it, and at the end of the day, you know, I was there to do a job, and that's what I did, so.
Okay. And Emma, obviously 2015, now for anyone, backstory with you, you were a special advisor. People like me would have known who you were. You were a special advisor to the First Minister, Peter Robinson, for many years. And then obviously a vacancy comes up in 2015. What made you make that leap from kind of the backroom, SPAD, which a lot of people would argue has more power and more control over the government than actually being an MLA? What made you make the jump in?
Well, when people used to ask me that question, I would always say insanity, because when you look back, you do question yourself as to why. But I think really for me, you know, I had got involved in politics in 2007. So I had came over to be a sort of shadow SPAD to what was in sort of like a preparation for government committee prior to the establishment of the Assembly again. I then, you know, I only came over, you know, on a short-term basis. I was a barrister, that's what I wanted to do. But, you know, it was a really interesting opportunity, and I thought, look, I'll come over and I'll do this for whatever, a year. And then, of course, when I was in that role, I had been offered about coming over to be special advisor for Dr. Paisley in the new Assembly. So, of course, like that's something really fascinating. So I stayed on. So I somehow ended up being a SPAD from 2007, 2015. And of course in 2015, Peter Robinson was indicating that he was stepping down. So for me it was a really good opportunity, I suppose, to move on from politics and to move on from SPADdom. I was always a great believer it's not a career to be a SPAD, you know, and in one sense it's very much maybe a younger person's game. I know that's changed a little bit. So I'd indicated to the party, and I'd indicated to Peter, that I'm looking elsewhere, and, you know, either going back to the bar or going on to something else. But I think certainly Peter was very, very keen that I didn't leave politics, and I think he felt very strongly that he wanted me to move into frontline politics after having that background role for a long time. Not least because he was really keen to try to encourage more women into politics, particularly obviously from his point of view, the DUP, but in unionist politics. And he was also a great believer that's not just about getting more women to stand. He really wanted women in winnable seats. Yeah. And I think he felt that the co-option route was then a really good way of getting younger women established in a constituency, and perhaps not facing the same challenges that you would face if you were just running for the first time against maybe more well-established male candidates.
Just want to ask you, I'll stick with you on this, Emma, before I go to Megan. You were co-opted in. Did you feel, or is there a sense in the Assembly, I've always wondered this, do co-opted MLAs often get viewed sometimes as less legitimate than those who've been elected? Did you find that or feel that at all?
Well, personally, I feel there's a lot of hypocrisy about this. Some people do get treated differently than others. There's no doubt about that. And I think when you look at some people who are given quite a platform, and it's never mentioned that they're actually a co-optee. Personally, I got a huge amount of abuse for being a co-optee, and I was regularly told on social media and in other places, and I think in the chamber, that I had no mandate. And when I would say, well, look, you know, I have a mandate, because the mandate is the mandate of the person that I am stepping in for. And in my case, it was the late Jimmy Spratt. He was unwell, and he felt for health reasons that he had to step down. It was very legitimate grounds why he had to step down. So yeah, I got a lot of abuse if I would have put something on social media right from the outset. Social media didn't take to me, I think it's fair to say. But, you know, whenever I tried to put something up there, you know, I would have got a lot of messages underneath saying, who are you to speak about this? Where's your mandate? Why don't you go out and get some votes? So it is difficult. And I think the irony of that time was, of course, about a third of the Assembly
MLAs,
were co-opted. Yeah. So I was by no means, I was one of the last in to be co-opted, actually.
At least you didn't have a lot, because you came in September 2015, the election was May 2016, but Megan, you came in nearly at the start of the mandate, 2012, the election had been the previous May of 2011. Did you ever find that, or did people just shrug their shoulders and not really worry about it?
It depends. Emma said there's a hypocrisy. Some people get it, some people don't. To say it very plainly, co-opted women get it, co-opted men don't. Yeah. I was co-opted, I think there was 5 of us co-opted on the same day. And I know certainly me and the other women got it quite a lot. And I used to get the whole, you know, you have no mandate thing either. But the thing that annoyed me the most was there was times when, and I suppose in reality, the party were looking to put a young woman in a position like that, you know, for reasons that Emma has outlined about winnable seats and things.
Yeah, and both of you were like first-time politicians coming through in your own right. You know, there was never, I don't think there was ever a Fearon in the Assembly, or there was ever a Little or a Pengelly in the chamber. My
grandfather was an independent unionist councillor on Armagh Council, so we had a bit of a political history in the family, but not in the Assembly. No, there was certainly no nepotism in that regard.
So just going back, and I'll start with you on this, Emma. 2016, the first election. Now you're going in a target seat for the DP. We're trying to win two seats in that and trying to make a gain. You were defending the sitting DUP seat and obviously trying to make a gain. What was it like running for the first time? What was it like actually getting your name on a ballot, seeing your face on a poster, and actually, you know, going to a manifesto launch and going, oh my goodness, that's me beside Arlene Foster? Oh, you know, what was that like?
I think it's very strange, because I think for a lot of people, and I would have put myself in this category, you spend so much of your life avoiding the camera and running away from it and saying, no, I don't want my photograph taken. And then suddenly you're in this space where, you know, a lot of what you do, particularly in the run-up to election campaign, is getting your photograph taken. You know, so that's a big change. And I found it was a big change as well, going from being in the shadows, in the background as a SPAD, where you're sort of specifically not allowed to be or have that public role, to suddenly a large part of what you do being presenting, you know, being interviewed, you know, doing some media. like in a weird way, whenever I came over, there was just a lot of media interest in it, I think for a number of reasons, and maybe because of a number of characteristics or issues or whatever. You know, so I really felt that for me, I was in the eye of the storm, and I didn't anticipate that.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I had articulated some concerns about this, and like, I'm not really the type of person to like a lot of publicity, and I'm actually, though it surprises most people, I'm quite shy, a little bit introverted. And, you know, I remember Peter Robinson and others saying to me, well, look, you know, you're coming over as a backbench MLA, you know, you're coming over, you're not in the leadership of the party. You know, there's going to be some interest, of course. I think he probably knew there would be a lot, but he was trying to minimise it a little bit. But I really found myself in the eye of that storm. And I remember my first week, I was on the front of the Belfast Telegraph 4 out of the 5 days for various stories. And it just felt really quite frightening. It felt really, you know, isolating. You had all of these people criticising you who didn't know you, and that was sort of, you know, and you were hearing it because I was on Twitter and I was on social media, and some really horrible abuse about that. So, you know, it was a big change for me. And into that election, you know, there'd been a bit of an issue in the local constituency with some of the other DUP members who felt that they should have been co-opted. I had a DUP councillor who then left and was running against me. So that had created a bit of flavour, which of course the media like. So there was a lot of interest in that. And, you know, the media were really focusing on maybe I wouldn't get in and really ramping that up. And even though that wasn't what I was hearing on the ground, and in the end the results were very, very clear, you did feel attacked, and in that way it was very strange for your first election. I think most first-time candidates wouldn't have that level of focus or publicity or pressure. So, you know, it was a really difficult election, personally and emotionally for me, and that was my first one, and I suppose that set a lot of the emotional scars.
Little did you know, you had a couple more in quick succession.
Yeah, indeed.
Megan, what about you? 2016, you run for the first time. Obviously, you've been in the Assembly for a good while.
Yeah.
Near Armagh is a pretty solid Sinn Féin, but there is 3 candidates going for, well, it was 6 seats then, but then 5 after. What was that like?
It was strange, yeah, because I had already been in the Assembly for 4 years, and I had established myself, and I thought that I knew the election was coming up, and I thought, like, I'm ready for this. You know, I know what to expect, but you don't know what to expect until it happens. But I suppose I had a different experience than Emma. Like, it was a really lovely experience. Don't get me wrong, it is physically and emotionally exhausting, but it is just really exciting to be out. I'm a real people person. I love chatting to people, so I really enjoyed the canvassing. I really enjoyed getting to know, well, I had already known all the party members locally, but a lot of people come on board to help at election time, and just getting to have the crack with them on the doors. And it is kind of strange. So, you know, when you leave to go to the shop to get milk or whatever, you pass your own face like 10 times on the road. Like, that part of it is very strange, and I don't think you'll ever really get used to that. But actually, I think maybe you were in this documentary too. My first election, the BBC did a documentary, and they followed a couple of candidates from each party around. So that was kind of exciting as well. Do you know, when the election was over, to be able to kind of watch it back. Did you actually? Because
it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, were you not nervous about the fact? Because obviously, if you knocked a door and you got dogs abuse, you'd be sure that was literally the clip that would have made it in. So
I've never had that on a door. Like, I am completely blessed, right? Even if people wouldn't want to vote for you, like, I don't know if it's a country thing or like South Armagh thing. People are just so lovely and like salt of the earth, and you go to the door, even if they're like, look, I'm not voting for you, like, you would still not get any bad manners at all. It was just like, I can't or whatever. And most doors were just really friendly and polite. So I've never really had that experience. I've had it canvassing for other people in different areas, but I've never had that in South Armagh for me. So that was kind of a blessing as well.
Okay. And what was for you, Emma, what was the most enjoyable part of actually being part of an election campaign? You see, because to me, election campaigns are just stacks of crack for the minute they're called. But I appreciate I'm a backseat driver in it. Like, you know, it's just it's all upside for me. But what about you know, was there anything enjoyable that you actually found getting out and about?
Yeah, you know, I think election campaigns are, you know, it's very much a game of two halves. On one level, it is quite emotional. It can be quite frightening. You can a lot of apprehension about and worry about what might happen. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, people do here largely vote for a party, but it doesn't mean it doesn't feel really personal, because it's your picture up there, it's your name, you're asking people to vote for you and to try to justify why. That's quite strange. And it's also really strange just to go up to random doors and you rap a door and you just ask the person, what do you think of me? But, you know, on the other side of that, and I know I've said this on social media before and people have said that can't be the case, but, you know, like you know, I actually really enjoy being out knocking doors. Now, it's you do have that apprehension before you start it, but once you start it and you get into the first, you know, hour of it, and then you just have that schedule, you're doing it day in and day out. But there is just really good crack with your team. You know, if you build up the right team, and usually a combination of family members and friends and colleagues in your constituency association, and, you know, you can have just really great chats. You know, we would tend to do maybe 2 or 3 each side of the road type of thing in the various routes, and you would always have a bit of a mix, and you know, you can have that conversation as you're passing each other. Some of the best times I've had have been just out and, you know, with the wee team, and then everybody maybe gathering afterwards or over lunch and, you know, discussing things. Yeah. You do get some people who are not nice on the doors, and I would always say, especially if they're being, you know, not nice to younger members of the team. And I kind of think, you know, look, you know, if you know who you're going to vote for, that's fair enough. And if you've got an issue with a political party, you know, email me or speak to me. But, you know, really shouting at or cursing at a young person doesn't achieve anything. You know, they're out here because they believe in something, and they, of course, understand you don't necessarily agree with them. And that shouldn't be a bad thing. You know, I don't think people should be shouting at people for that reason.
Do you think because I've always wondered about, like, when, obviously, where I sit, and when we talk about politicians, and, like, quite often, like, if you're, like, putting up numbers, quite often, I think, and I can fall into this trap too, we treat politicians like numbers. Like, we go, oh, well, that's not good, they're never going to get elected, or, geez, that person's a goner. Like, you know, Megan, just in terms of that, do you think that maybe we don't see the humanity in politicians enough? We don't actually kind of go that, you know, as Emma was saying there, okay, sure, you're criticising that party, but my face is, I'm the face of that party in this constituency. You know, do you think that we don't do that enough?
Yeah, I definitely think in the last couple of years there's been a serious increase in the vitriol that's being directed at people in politics. I think there has been, like, a dehumanisation of politicians, probably across the world, but it's definitely been felt here due to, like, obvious political circumstances that have arisen here. But I do think people need to take a step back and just think, you know, like, we're people, we have families, we're grieving, we've got things in our own lives happening. I also become really protective of our teams during elections. They put so much work into it to get us elected for the party, because it's not about us. You know, they put a lot of themselves into it as well. So yeah, I just think that the discourse has become extremely nasty, unnecessarily so. You know, it's a really difficult thing to put yourself up for election. It's really, really hard work. And I'm not trying to, like, we're not saints or anything. I'm not trying to say that, you know, we work harder than anybody else, because we don't. But there's not a recognition of the fact that we have our own things going on in our lives, and you're kind of expected to be on call, like, 24/7. Like, people reach out to you on Facebook or Twitter at 10 o'clock at night expecting a reply instantly.
And Emma, obviously, you know, Megan's alluded to it there, how demanding a public rep is, and, you know, you guys are, you know, you may not be contracted to be on call, but you're expected to be on call. If there's a fire in the constituency, if something happens, you know, you're expected to be out at those things, or if there's maybe a contentious parade or whatever it is. Is it as demanding as it looks? Because anyone I know who is an MLA or works for an MLA, even people who are councillors, the time, the man hours that they're putting in is substantive.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't see the amount of work that MLAs, if MLAs are doing their job right, you know, they will be incredibly busy. And I think it's a whole combination of things. Same with MPs, of course, as well, you know, because you've got so many different elements to your job. You know, most MLAs or MPs would be on a committee. If you're on a committee, you have substantial committee papers, hundreds of pages. Yeah. If you want to do your job right, you have to sit down, read through those, and then attend committee. If you are the spokesperson or you've got particular issues, then you need to be in the chamber, you need to be listening to that, you need to be reading your research paper, preparing your speeches, giving your speeches. So that takes up a chunk of the week. Then of course if you're doing media, which of course a lot of politicians do, you're down in the studios, you're maybe up for gamoo in the morning, doing that at 7:15 or 7:30, then you're into storming. But then the other side of the job, because you're doing that maybe 2 or 3 days a week, but around that you have all of your constituency cases to do, and I think a lot of people don't realise a busy constituency office will have hundreds of constituency cases, everything from housing to health related issues, education issues. Each of that is a file that requires, that meeting, the follow up, the drafting of letters. And then on top of that, you are maybe giving out leaflets, you're trying to communicate with people. And then a lot of the likes of community AGMs, community meetings, in any constituency you're going to have, scores of those types of community groups, and very often elected reps are invited to go to them, and elected reps like to try to go to them, but those are almost invariably at night, at weekends, there's events on Saturday, so you really can fill your day from 7:30, 8 o'clock right through. And I think when I was an MLA, it was that sense at the end of the week that you never get everything done that you wanted to get done. No. Yeah. And you're literally running from one thing to the other.
And to be home at night before 10 o'clock, that is a standard. And even just on the constituency stuff that you've mentioned, it's, for me, it was probably the most rewarding part, but also it's the most taxing part, because people only ever contact you with a problem. And I think it's not really appreciated, the mental toll that can take whenever you're kind of like a sponge for people's negativity and problems in their lives, and it takes a real personal toll on your own mental health, your own well-being, and of course you want to do your best and solve those issues, and it might seem it could be a small issue, but to that person it's their world, it's everything that's going on for them, but you've got hundreds of them on the desk, and the people who work in our constituency offices are just heroes.
In terms of actually when you leave politics, right, is it pretty immediate that you feel the weight just leave your shoulders? I know the two of you left politics obviously under different circumstances, but Megan, for you, when you departed in 2019, when you handed in your resignation or told Michelle that you were going, did you feel almost immediately this is great, or did you feel oh my goodness, what am I doing?
It was very, very strange. So I kind of knew for a couple of months that I was going to be stepping down, and it was just kind of internal machinations of who's going to be co-opted in and all that. So I kind of wanted to just take my time and make sure it was done right. But it was fairly immediate. I went away travelling for a couple of weeks and came back, and that did me the world of good. But I have to say then kind of, I'm obviously working with the OU now, and kind of just working in a normal job for the first couple of months, I did not know what to do with myself. I was like, what do people do in the evenings? What do you do?
They chill out.
Yeah. What do you do from 5 o'clock on? I don't know. So it was just that kind of took a bit of getting used to. But no, it's really good now.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Emma, what about you? Obviously, I mean, you lost your seat, but even after that, the shock of that, but also how did you feel once the kind of the burden lifts off you as well in some respects?
Okay, I suppose it was slightly different for me because, I was really right back into it with the negotiations, literally back up to Stormont a couple of days after, around the new decade, new approach. And then really quickly after that, I suppose, back into being a special advisor for a period of time. So I suppose I think I'd really delayed my exit from politics until really June, whenever, I decided to leave at the time that Arlene was leaving. But I would completely, it's that strange sense of being able to reflect off all of the things that you've neglected, all of the friends that I neglected, and family, and not seeing them, because it's just so hard even at the weekends. And I think, from my point of view, when I was over in Westminster, you're away a large part of the week. It was a Brexit Parliament, so you're away Monday through Thursday. I was normally doing media on a Thursday night of some kind, always a community meeting of some kind on the Friday night, and some sort of a community constituency event on the Saturday, maybe doing Sunday politics on Sunday morning, and then flying off on Monday morning. So it was this really busy schedule And whenever you work that, then you kind of feel guilty about turning out and saying to your husband or family, oh, by the way, I'm going to head out with some friends tonight, that one night or 2 nights that I'm home, or I'm going to go down and see. So it was really, really hard, I think, to have the work-life balance. So like really since I left, it's just been just trying to invest in all of those things that I neglected, and enjoying things and going out and going for walks and doing all of the things that you just simply didn't have time to do.
Rather you two than me. I would never give up my weekends with my mates. Actually, I enjoy it. I want to ask you, so obviously you're going to be viewing this for the first time, kind of from outside. You're outside looking in. Emma, obviously you've been forward for the DUP in the last number of elections, 2016, 2017, 2019, of course. God, you had a run of snap elections there, didn't you? I mean,
four elections in about 5
years.
For
someone who only got into it in 2015. What are you looking out for in this election? I mean, are you looking forward to viewing it from that side of the desk? And also, what is it in general are you looking out for?
In any election, you pick up a lot of issues on the ground. So once you start knocking doors, you start to get a sense about what messages are cutting through, what are people genuinely interested in, what's the questions. Now, we would have a structure of feeding in and feeding back some of those. And hopefully, if you've got your election tactics right, that aligns with the key messages that you've set up for the election. But sometimes there will be emerging issues as well. So I think that will be interesting about this election, seeing how the parties start to tailor their message, and what that will show us is what feedback they're getting from the teams on the ground. Yeah. And, again, you very quickly hear if there's antagonism, if there's, if people are very unhappy. Most parties, I think, divide their areas into, what would probably be perceived as a strong mixed area, something with a very low yield, and you will tend to get a very different reaction in those areas, of course you will, but a different range of issues as well. So, what parties will want to see is a lot of support coming out in their traditionally strong areas. If there's trouble on the ground, then, that's fed back, and they obviously have to take it into account.
When you're tucked up in bed at 10:30 at night and they're all still like knocking doors, you'd be right. Megan, how are you looking? Are you looking forward to viewing this election from outside looking in?
Yeah, I have the opposite of FOMO. I've got the joy of missing out this time. So, feeling about 10 years younger. I'm still only 30. But I am looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really interesting election. There's just been so much happen in the last couple of months, and couple of years actually, so it'll be really interesting to see what way things go. It'll be great to be on the sidelines, kind of looking in, like cheering everybody on. I know how difficult it is.
Although they may still get used out to take down some of the posters from the lamppost.
I was never one for climbing up the ladder, to
you
be
just
fair.
You just do that for a photo.
All right, okay,
it's very scary, actually.
Megan, Emma, thank you so very much for coming and giving us your time today and your thoughts. That's all we have time for on this edition of Slugger TV. I want to thank our guests, Megan Fearon and Emma Pengelly. And again, just want to end on a very sad note. We lost a politician over the last few days, Christopher Stalford. Christopher actually came in here in 2018 and did Slugger TV, and he was a great friend of the website, and he was also a good friend to me as well. So we just wanted to extend, on behalf of everyone at Slugger Hotel, our very deepest condolences to his family and colleagues within the DUP. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much for watching. Keep up to date with everything else on sluggerotool.com.